Hi everybody, my name is Rob Scott from UC Today. Welcome to another Cisco collaboration focused session. I'm with Jonathan George, Webex Master and Digital Collaboration Lead at Adoptt. And today we have a special guest, Keith Griffin, Distinguished Engineer at Cisco. So today we're focusing on critical collaboration powered by Cisco. So however, before we get started, can we start with some intros? So Keith, maybe as our guest, you should go first.
Sure, yeah. Thanks again for having me along today. My name is Keith Griffin. I'm a distinguished engineer at Cisco, and in my normal day job, I focus on cognitive collaboration. So that's the application of AI and machine learning to the collaboration portfolio, and it's something that yields a lot of very interesting work and very useful features for end users. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. I'm also the site leader for Cisco in Galway, where Webex Teams is developed, as well as aspects of Webex calling, along with some other features. And as much as I love talking about the AI stuff, I guess the world changed a lot in recent days and weeks. So probably we'll talk about different topics, maybe come back to AI and machine learning at a later time.
Absolutely, Keith. Absolutely. So how about you, Jonathan? Could you give us a quick intro? I know most people will know you already, but go on, give us a quick intro.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the digital collaboration lead at Adoptt. Adoptt are a small company focused on customer experience and user adoption, basically ensuring that customers deliver the outcomes that they were intending when they bought this technology, and delivering getting high levels of adoption, making sure people are using it and realizing those benefits.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. So welcome everybody. We did have a schedule, and that schedule kind of got thrown out when coronavirus came along, and it kind of hit us from the side recently. So it's kind of week 1 of April 2020. We are in the middle of the epidemic, and I was keen to kind of get your perspective, Keith. How has Cisco reacted to the epidemic, and how has its employees and ultimately customers reacting to this crisis right now?
Yeah, it's a big question, because it's a very big impact, and it was a very sudden impact. We from the point of view of Cisco overall, I think what it did was put us into immediately a mandatory work from home position, and while we're well suited to doing that, it's still quite a big step for people when you put technology aside, when everybody must work from home and all of the time. And that's not just true for Cisco, that ended up being true for any of us lucky enough to be in a position where we can work remotely and we're in that type of roles. Conscious there's a lot of people out there that aren't in roles like that, and we're lucky that we can. And then we also find ourselves in a lucky position of being able to provide solutions to help people to work remotely. So I think the business impact has been huge, and we've had that same adjustment that everyone else had, where we don't have our colleagues side by side in the office like we normally would, but we do virtually using Webex and the various collaboration tools overall. So I think that was one huge impact. The other was then, because the tools themselves became so popular, and because we created an offer to try and help people work remotely, it immediately started putting large stresses on the system and on across various teams within Cisco. If you think about our security business unit, collaboration business unit, where I'm based, everybody is just working around the clock right now to engineer and scale the platform and work with customers directly. Whatever your day job was 2 weeks ago, it's probably not now. It's just all hands on deck to make sure that we can do whatever we can to help people work remotely. So that aspect has been that's a very big impact in terms of our day-to-day working. I think one of the things that I also really like in the Cisco response, and it came top down from Chuck Robbins, was the genuine will to help, asking ourselves, where can we help, what difference can we make, whether that comes down to making free offers and helping people get on board, to, like I said, just working day and night through weekends, whatever it takes to to get stuff done and help people out. I've really liked that spirit of giving that is in Cisco, and it came all the way down, even locally in our office in Galway in Ireland, down to people volunteering and donating equipment from their desks to local hospitals, knowing that these are like greater causes, and that's happening. That's not just local here. It's something that we ended up doing, but I'm seeing that at every Cisco location everywhere, and it's fantastic to see. So yeah, back to your question, like the impact in the company has been really in every direction imaginable, right? It's all around, but we're able to keep going, and that's good. And I think it's also really important, you asked in the question, it's really important also to talk about customers that have been able to keep going through this, and partners that give us the scale. There are partners out there doing exactly the same thing, helping, getting solutions in place, working hands-on, whether it's from the service enablement to adoption services, so that people can actually go from maybe never having worked from home before or work remote to understanding what it means to do that. Because in a lot of cases, it's not just about the technology, it's about how you actually adopt that service, how you make it work, where you work in your home, just in general, how to make that happen. I imagine it's a pretty interesting time for Jonathan and the team as well. The term we use overall is right now is that's overused, is unprecedented demand. There's unprecedented demand for all of these services, and the whole situation is unprecedented. We never saw or expected a situation where everybody would use all of the solution all of the time, right? It's often been an occasional type of use solution, or for people, a subset of people that always work from home. But to have everybody on all of the time just is, a remarkable challenge for every aspect of the industry.
Indeed, an incredible response from Cisco. So hats off to you there. As a 80,000 employee strong enterprise, that must have been such a huge impact, not just to the business, but then have to offer the technology out to the rest of the world. But we'll come on to that. Keith, sorry, that's my mistake. I was supposed to say Jonathan, so I'll cut that one out. Jonathan, you're at the opposite end, a small business. What have you seen from your perspective?
Yeah, it's been really interesting, because obviously from a business perspective, there's been no change for us, because we Adoptt, we don't have an office, we don't have a physical office that I used to go to. We've been living the Cisco collaboration dream for some time, in terms of everybody works from home, everybody is kitted out with, I'm in front of a Webex Desk Pro, most of our staff have DX80s, dedicated endpoints. We're all in with Webex Teams, all in with Webex meetings. So from a personal point of view, my life hasn't changed that much, right, in terms of the impact to me personally, other than the fact that the rest of my family members are now in the house with me. So we're in the school holidays now, but last week my wife, who's a teacher, she was upstairs delivering her classes to her students, via technology, which was a completely new experience for her. And it was interesting for me watching that, to see how, potentially, if you're not used to working with this stuff all of the time, that the anxiety and stress that getting the technology to work can cause. She's sitting there going, calling me, going, well, hang on, the video button's not like lit up. How do I make this work? Meanwhile, she's, there's a class of students waiting for her to deliver that training. Similarly, my son, obviously home from school, he's consuming his classes in, on the other side of that, completely different school. So, during the course of last week, we had me on my normal meetings, my wife delivering these classes, my son consuming classes, my other daughter's home from university. So it was interesting to see the impact and effect it had on those people that are not used to that environment. And I think that brings us into, if you look at organizations, we talk at Adoptt very much about how do we, basically survive this digital disruption wave that we're in at the moment. And we split that into 3 pillars: the collaboration maturity of an organization. So how mature is it in terms of the tools that it has available at its disposal? And obviously what we've seen now is rapid deployment of those tools, either for people who had them but maybe weren't using them, or the people that didn't have them and are now signing up for free offers and getting that capability. And then the adoption agility of that organization, the ability of that organization to drive that adoption, to help those users rather than just throw technology at them and go, hey, here it is, here's the technology, off you go, you're now working from home, go use this stuff. Their capability to actually help and guide their users through that. And then really, most importantly, the employee well-being aspect. So that actually, for me, working from home all the time, I'm used to it, I'm familiar with it, all of the idea of, the loneliness, that comes with working from home, we're used to that. Whereas now we've got a whole load of people that are thrown into this environment, and the impact on health and well-being, is something that organizations really need to, make sure that they understand and are doing all they can to help nurture their employees through that. So, long answer to your question, Rob, but, basically from my perspective, personally, not a lot has changed, but obviously from a global perspective, a huge amount has changed. And it's really interesting to see, our customers start to grapple with those challenges that maybe they put off in the past.
And maybe if I could jump in there, Rob, as well, I think, because we're so used to working remotely, that point Jonathan made is really important. Sometimes we've had to make conscious effort to connect, because we're just used to doing our normal remote working thing. So what I've seen is like a lot of people go out of their way to host maybe like a virtual coffee morning. So if there's that group of people you always go for coffee with mid-morning, just because you're at home doesn't mean you can't do that, right? So that it's great to see that type of spirit still exist. We saw the encouragement of maybe on those the first few minutes of a team meeting, bring your kids along and make it normal for everybody, because it is the way we have to work right now, and there's no point in adding to anxiety or pressures by having false barriers, I should say, there, right? So if you can remove those and just make it okay that if the kids are around for a while, or if we're going to do some social activity like a cup of coffee as we normally would, try to keep those normal things going as much as possible. Just to give you one example, at Cisco in Dublin, at our Dublin office last week, we hosted a jukebox. So a live musician came in, and people over Webex would ask for certain tunes, and he played, and it was just like a really nice, calming entry into the weekend after a pretty tough week for everybody. And it just, where we might have normally gone to the pub for that, we were able to do it, virtually over Webex, and it was a great idea by the people that put it together, and it came off really well.
Rob, that's not your invitation to start to sing now, please.
I can give you my best Oasis song if you like. I do a wonderful Wonderwall, but maybe that's for another time. You're absolutely right. It's been an incredible response, and we've seen such a lot of great things on social media, especially. How about the impact on WebEx? I mean, WebEx is really at the core of this conversation today, because that's what's provided the continuity for a lot of organizations. I mean, how's that coped with that such rapid adoption of the services, Keith?
Yeah, it's a really critical question. I mean, this is we're looking at this on a minute by minute basis. I mean, the amount of pressure on the system is immense. The amount of pressure across the entire industry is not just Webex. Everybody's running at capacity. Like I was saying earlier, there was, when we designed these, we designed them for absolutely huge scale. Webex has been around for a very long time. It has an extremely robust and global architecture, and at the same time, it's no solution out there is designed for everyone to show up all at the same time and always and stay on. So that's where really the scale is coming from. So far we're happy with the way the system has responded. As I mentioned, the architecture is there. It's scaled globally. We've been rapidly adding more compute and more of all of the elements of the architecture to the system as fast as we possibly can. And of course, like, even if you take it back a few weeks ago, it was difficult to get components, right? So supply chain was an issue, and that's now opening up a little bit more. But we've been able to just about stay ahead of that. So so far, yeah, we're happy with it. And one of the things that I want to point out as well is that it's not just about the architecture or making it work at any cost. It has to be done within also our principles around security and data privacy and everything else. So it's not just simply allow anybody to show up on video. It's got to have that secure enterprise grade robustness that you'd expect with a system like this. But again, like I say, we've been doing this for a long time, and it's been designed with, I wouldn't say with this situation in mind, but certainly with this type of scale. We're used to those big hundreds of millions of users type of scenarios. So but yeah, that's not to say it's not being without its challenge. We're all working very hard, and we'll continue to do so, as our partners, admins in customer sites, like everybody in these roles in partner organizations, IT admins, Webex admins right now are just like doing heroic work, is the only way I could describe it, to enable all of their users. Like, we provide a platform, but they're catering directly for our users with the features they need. It might be that they need like an event town hall with Webex Event Center. It may be that they need meetings or personal meeting rooms. So those admins were never so popular in terms of their level of requests that they're getting right now.
Yeah, I can only imagine the manpower behind the scenes making all this happen, because we just take it for granted that the cloud just works, it just scales, it, that kind of thing. But I can imagine there's a lot more to it than that. So, Jonathan, I was keen to kind of just touch on user adoption again, around kind of maybe some of the surprises you've seen, how have people reacted to remote working technology. It's almost felt like right, you will work remotely. So adoption is obviously going to happen much faster. But what have you seen from your perspective?
Really interesting in the sense that the phrase that we would have used prior to this crisis is that the use of any collaboration technology out there generally requires the discretionary effort of the user to basically use it. Right? Nobody is ever forced to use Webex or whatever collab technology happens to be in place. You can always pick up the phone or organize that face-to-face meeting or travel to meetings, or so that was always the challenge that from an adoption perspective was to get the users to the point of well, okay, what's in it for me? Why is this going to make my life better, simpler, quicker, easier, whatever it is, right? And that was always the challenge. And we would always have advised against a customer or an organization to mandate the use of technology, because generally that doesn't land very well. Users don't like being told, hey, you need to use this thing because it's good for you to use it. That's all been completely flipped on its head now with the concept of now you're going to work from home. There is no choice. It's not us as an organization making that choice. The government are putting in place the restrictions. We need to keep going. Here's some tools and technology to do it. Well, you need to use this technology because that's the only way that you can get stuff done, which at the end of the day is what all of this technology is about, is enabling people to get stuff done. So that's an interesting shift in terms of the dynamic from discretionary effort to almost like mandatory usage. But that, if you just leave it there, I don't think that solves the problem, right? There's still the getting the users to understand what it is, how to use it, why to use it. There's still an element of the what's in it for me. There's still an element of making sure that people have the capability and the ability to consume the technology from the home. We're not all lucky enough to have a home office that we can see. You've got people working from the kitchen table. I think there's the challenges around, okay, we're going to use VoIP as the audio method, but is everybody equipped with headsets? Because if they're not, they end up shouting at their laptop and then wondering why echo cancelling isn't working, the audio is rubbish, and some of those softer things are really important to make sure that okay, you're going to move people to this environment, but let's make sure that we still handhold and guide them through that process so that they get the best possible experience out of it and understand what they need to do. And I think it's interesting on the platform perspective. There's not a platform out there that hasn't faced its challenges in the last few weeks. With that unprecedented demand that that we've been talking about. So I mean, first is irrespective of the vendor, I think hats off to all of the people on the back, in the back room that are basically keeping this stuff up and running, whether that's Webex or any of the other collaboration technologies out there. I think it's an absolutely amazing effort to be able to keep that stuff going. But I think we, from a user perspective, we've really got to make sure that we help guide these people through this. And that, VoIP is a great thing, but again, that, potentially that's overloaded with bandwidth constraints and all the rest of it. I mean, the beauty of the Webex solution is, join from wherever you are, whatever network you're on, whatever device you happen to have in hand. And if all you've got is a phone, all you can do is make a phone call, then of course you can still get into a Webex meeting. So we're seeing that, explaining to users the difference between VoIP and PSTN and a video connection, from a video endpoint, if they're lucky enough to have one of those or whatever, that's all, none of that changes, right? There's still that hand-holding effort that needs to happen to make it successful.
I just want to jump in on that as well, because I think that's, it can't be understated enough about things like quality. You can have the best platform in the world, but you've got to give yourself every opportunity to bring out the quality in that platform as a user. If you can get your hands on like a high quality headset, or you look at your audio configuration, video configuration options, maybe even external camera if you're working from a laptop. All of these things make a huge difference. It's not just all about the platform, the back end services of this, but I think you've also got to look at simple stuff like the positioning of your laptop, that it's not beside a noisy source or something like that. The same when it comes to video. Like I'm using a virtual background right now because I've got a very messy part gym, part office type setup behind me, but at times of the day, believe it or not, it does occasionally get sunny in Ireland, and then there's so much like glare and shine off my glasses. It's not, it doesn't give a good video experience. You have to look out for those types of things, and those aren't things that people that don't work remotely often are used to dealing with. So just like Jonathan was saying, I think all of those things are really so critical. Everyone's got to give themselves the best chance they can of being effective while they're remote, and it doesn't matter which what platform you're on. I think that's solid advice.
I completely agree, Keith. It's a really good point there. Keen to kind of just come on to my final question for you guys, and that's about kind of tomorrow. What does tomorrow look like? I mean, right now it feels like we're in the middle of a Black Mirror episode, but what does it look like tomorrow for the industry and B, the customer? Are we going to change the way we work? Are we all going to start remote working more? What do you think the impact's going to be like on the way we work going forward?
I'll maybe go first with it. I think it's this is a fundamental change in my view, at least. This is not going to be a spike for now, and we'll all go back to doing the same things the way we always did. I mean, maybe over time we'll fall back into that, but I think it's going to be a fundamental change around attitudes towards remote working. Jonathan talked a little bit about that earlier, and I completely agree. I think this is going to be a huge change, and it actually proves to us as well that some of the things that were big issues in weeks and months gone by, like climate change or commuting and traffic and so on, can be resolved or partially addressed with remote working. We're seeing that right now. Like I haven't put fuel in my car in over a month. I don't need to. There's nowhere to go. I can't go anywhere. But even when I can, I'm now learning that lesson that, well, maybe did I need to go to those places in the first place? Can I work, remotely like this? So I think that there is going to be a fundamental shift as people realize that, this works for them. There'll obviously be a lot of roles where it doesn't work or it partially works, but it may go back to partially working, but where they never remote worked before. So I think that will also drive additional adoption and use of remote working solutions. And then I think there's going to be a very interesting phase, which is the phase of getting back to work. So we all shut this down very quickly in our personal and professional lives, and for those lucky enough to be able to work from home, we are. But it's not going to be an equivalent switch back, would be my guess. I mean, I don't know. I'm not involved in running countries, but while we shut down in a number of days, I imagine it'll be a much slower return because of the nature of this outbreak. It's not that we can just all go out and hug each other the next day or have one big party. I mean, that's not going to roll out that way, I think. So what I expect is that our attitude on returning to work is going to be similar, where maybe people have a preference where they can to work from home, rather than going directly back into a premise or office environment. And where they do, going back to some of the technologies that I get to work on every day, things like Webex Assistant and conversational AI and speech assistants, I'm already seeing lots of demand for people wanting to interact with a system by speech rather than touching a glass panel that somebody else has recently touched. Now, that might just be immediate demand because of this current crisis, but it shows me a change in attitude when we're getting that type of request, and we have that conversational technology there. We can absolutely do that. It's, you know, it's released for over a year, but it's very interesting that this is a driver for it. I never in my wildest dreams had this as a driver, as part of the vision for conversational AI, that it would be this type of scenario. It was always driven around its more general, you know, usefulness, convenience, productivity, and so on. So I think that that's a very interesting phase for us to look at as well, is the return to work phase, and how we help and how technologies can help with that, what's likely to be a more gradual rollout.
Great. So Jonathan, would you like to add to that at all?
Yeah, I think it's although, it's an incredibly unfortunate situation that the world finds itself in, I think from a, this is probably the biggest change agent that we've ever seen to drive home a lot of what we in the industry have been talking about for a long, long time, and to some degree have struggled to get organizations to buy into that. It was always too difficult or not right for us or whatever. And I think, that changing, I think as we go through that, and I think Keith's absolutely right, that gradual, it's not going to be flip a switch, everybody gets back in their cars and starts going back into the office. I think it'll be interesting to see that, whether people, did it work for them? Did it work partially? Were there lessons learned from that? Is this something that we need to put in place? Because I think, and again, I hope I'm wrong, but unfortunately, I don't think, we'll probably see COVID 2021 or, whatever it is, the next realm of this. I don't think the world will ever be the same again. And therefore, I think organizations will have to think more deeply and plan for this type of thing potentially happening again, so that it doesn't come as a surprise. It doesn't be that we're almost ready for it and we switch back into this mode, should such an unfortunate thing happen again. So I think this being the biggest change agent we've seen in the industry for a long time, I think is really, really interesting. I think the other interesting fact, and again, not necessarily related to the use of this technology, but actually I think we're seeing some amazing things happen in terms of organizations collaborating together and innovation happening at a speed which we've all talked about for a long time. But actually, when the rubber hits the road, and again, excuse the pun there, but that people have managed to get together and actually start to do some amazing things. So like, and again, there's lots of examples of this, but one that I was reading about recently, the Mercedes Formula One team, working with, I think, a University College London to produce ventilators, and from from design to production was a week. Stuff that was always in the past deemed as there was always an excuse. It was always too difficult or whatever. And now, actually, in this time of crisis, you're seeing innovation and collaboration happen at a speed that's unprecedented. And if it can happen at a time of crisis, why can't it happen in normal times, right? Why, I think people will realize that actually, if you get into this situation where that needs to happen, it can, and a lot of the barriers, and I think Keith used the word, previously, a lot of artificial barriers suddenly disappear. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that all plays out.
And one just addition to that as well, I've seen this a lot. I won't go into specific examples, but there's a lot of IT scenarios where suddenly maybe a certain version of software is out of date by several versions, and there would have been like barriers before, process barriers or whatever it might be, to upgrade those, or simply just the principle of it's not broken, don't fix it. But it always pays to be up to date on those latest versions, latest security, everything that goes with it. We've seen, this is not just a cloud-centric story. What we've seen is like a lot of upgrades, a lot of people focusing on just getting to the latest version, latest stability, latest security, and so on, and everything that goes with it. So I absolutely agree with that. Like when we look back on this and afterwards, I think we'll see people that maybe ended up having to do long upgrade cycles where they maybe needed to go through multiple versions. you know, weren't necessarily, like all of us, we're not expecting this type of scenario, and suddenly you find that you have to do like a series of upgrades. I think that will start driving best practices around more frequent upgrades for those that aren't on cloud-centric solutions. And I don't mean that just for collaboration. I think in general, that will be one of the look-back lessons that will be taken away from this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. I know we could go on and on and on. You've both made some fantastic points and gleaned some great. You know, I've gleaned some great insights from this conversation personally as well. It's great to see what Cisco are doing. It's great to see what you're doing on the front line, Jonathan, as well. But for now, thank you very much for joining me, and I wish all our viewers the very best going forward. And please tune in next time. I'm sure we're going to cover cognitive collaboration with Keith at some point soon. So all the best for now. Thank you.